I always thought that being an identical twin came with its share of advantages, but nothing could have prepared me for the moment that would change everything. My brother Ethan and I had always been close. We did everything together, played the same sports, studied at the same school, and even married identical twin sisters, Anna and Emily. To most, it seemed like the perfect life, a picture of harmony and coincidence. But the thing about being twins is that even with the closest connection, there's an undeniable difference between the two of us. Where I was reserved, Ethan was spontaneous. Where I thought before acting, he acted first and dealt with the consequences later. We always joked that we were like two sides of the same coin, different, but undeniably tied by something deeper. It was one evening, after a long day of work, that things took a strange and unsettling turn. I came home late, tired and ready to collapse into bed. Anna, my wife, was already asleep. She had been working late as well, and I assumed that she'd gone to bed early. I barely registered the stillness of the room as I entered, my thoughts on nothing but sleep. But as I climbed into bed and wrapped my arms around her, I felt an unusual warmth. The scent of her perfume lingered in the air, and the softness of her skin beneath my hands felt familiar yet different. For a moment, I felt a sense of deep comfort, like everything was exactly as it should be. It wasn't until I moved slightly, shifting my weight, that I realized something was wrong. The hair at the back of my neck prickled with confusion. The body beneath me wasn't quite right. The shape was different, too similar, but not quite the same. A knot of anxiety began to form in my stomach. I turned my head to look at the face in the dim light. It was her, but it wasn't Anna. It was Ethan's wife, Emily. Panic surged through me, a rush of adrenaline that made my breath catch in my throat. But before I could react, I heard a voice from the other side of the room, groggy and disoriented. "What? What's going on?" It was Ethan. He had walked into the room, apparently just as confused as I was. The realization hit us both at once, and the room seemed to close in around us. Somehow, through the haze of exhaustion, through the blur of identical appearances, Ethan had mistaken Emily for Anna, and I had made the same mistake in reverse. Neither of us spoke immediately. The silence was suffocating, like a weight pressing down on both of us. But then, something strange happened. The tension that should have come from such a realization didn't materialize. Instead, we both found ourselves caught in the moment, as if some invisible force had glued us to that space between clarity and confusion. The boundaries of right and wrong, of marital vows and promises, seemed to fade into a strange gray area. Despite the shame, the guilt, the realization that we had crossed an unimaginable line, neither of us stopped. It was a strange, almost automatic pull, as though the mistake had become an inevitable choice, and neither of us knew how to stop the momentum. When it finally ended, when the haze of confusion lifted and the truth was inescapable, I could barely look at either of them. My heart pounded in my chest as I stumbled to find words. Ethan, too, seemed to be struggling, his face as pale as mine. "What just happened?" he whispered, voice shaking with disbelief. I couldn't answer. I didn't know how to. The bond we shared as brothers, the bond we shared with our wives, it had all been shattered in a single, irreversible moment. And so we stood there in that shared silence, unable to look at each other, each of us too trapped in our own feelings of shame and regret. How could we fix what we had broken? How could we explain the unexplainable? The mistake had already been made, and there was no going back. The days that followed were filled with awkwardness, guilt, and a haunting question. What now? The lives we had built, the trust we had formed, seemed to crumble beneath the weight of our actions. Neither of us knew how to tell our wives what had happened, how to begin to make sense of the chaos we had created. We tried to make things right, but the damage lingered, a constant reminder of the line we had crossed. We learned that sometimes even the most intimate of relationships can be shattered by a single mistake, no matter how unintentional it was. The hardest part wasn't just the guilt we felt for what had happened, but knowing that the bond we had, the trust between us, had been altered forever. In the end, Ethan and I both learned the same lesson. No matter how close we are, no matter how similar we may seem, our actions still have consequences and some mistakes cannot be undone. We tried to make things right, but the damage lingered, a constant reminder of the line we had crossed. So I ask you, what would you do if you found yourself in our shoes? Would you try to rebuild what was broken?